Blog Talk Radio.
Here at ACO Radio, American Communications Online, or any affiliated stations or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Okay, I just needed the phone number off my phone. Call you right back. Okay, let's see. Phone. Okay. Well, hello, folks. I just had to get the phone number going for our guest tonight. This is all about American Communications Online and American Communications doing me, Theresa J Morris, as ET Radio. TJ Morris ET Radio is our brand. And we're going to be talking UFO Association tonight and a lot of history with a ufologist, well-known historian, former military, 50 years, and his OS intelligence, our open source intelligence. And we're talking about trust and how we can work together. And I am working together with people in a holding company, and I'm an agent, and I'm doing my best to help people that I met in the past, including J. Allen Hynek, get the story straight. So what we're going to do tonight is ask anybody that knows me that wants to come and be a volunteer in our community. You can find me on patreon.com /Theresa J Morris. That's Theresa with an H, THERESA JMORRIS on patreon.com, and I will be sure to make sure that whoever you are wanting to support or whatever group or association, including ACO Association for professionals and agents, consultants, organizers, and then we have ACE Metaphysical Institute for mystics, oracles, psychics, sages, seers. We have UFO Association for ufologists, and ACO, Alien Contact Org, for alienologists, and then we have cryptozooologists and even fortean and unexplained mysteries. But, with lack of government funds these days, we're excited to tell you what the past has offered us, including people that are like me. We're journalists, researchers, investigators. But I'm just coming back to work with different associations I've agreed to help get their information out there, especially videographers and, photographers and artists, and even Suzanne Wyman, which has only been a psychic all her life, but willing to help her, and she's helping us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Jan Aldrich, so I'm going to call him right now, and I'm dialing his number. Let's see if he'll show up here. I think he's in Connecticut.
Jan,
so he's helping us.
Suzanne Aldrich.
Oh, wait, which phone?
Can't take your call now.
Oh, okay, let me hang up
on the phone.
At the tone,
please record your message. When you have finished recording, simply hang up or press pound for further options.
Let me hang up with Jan. Okay, Jan, I'm going to call you. Okay, Jan, I'm calling you. So Jan is really good at what he does. So I guess I got to call him again. All right, here we go. 860. Now that I got the number, let me try that one more time. Okay, I've got to hang it up. Let's see. All right, let's dial that, and we're going to hang this one up. I had to get his phone on. He was like, I'm over here. He's like on the cell phone.
Jan or Suzanne Aldrich.
Whoops. Are we not hung up
Can't
over
take
here?
your call now. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, simply hang up or press pound for further options.
All right. Well, let's see. Hi, Jan. We're still trying to reach you. I guess we're on the other line. We had this. Okay, Jan Aldrich is a ufologist, folks, and he's doing a great job of trying to scan and to digital world so all of us can have trust in open source information. And I'll try to call him right back. So third time's the charm, right? All right, let's try one more time. Okay. Well, okay, we'll get together, folks. It's I know it sounds funny, but I'm having to go through my contacts to get his phone to call in the studio because I'm in two locations with several phone lines and running a board. So it's like you see audio, video, but what we're doing here is the computer does not store the number. I wish
Hello?
it did.
Yeah.
There we are. Now
yeah,
I got you on the right
I guess
phone.
I got a voicemail on the phone and it knocked me off.
Oh, okay. Well, we had you on one, but we couldn't get you on the studio. But, all right, I told them 3 times the charm. So we apologize for technical difficulties. But, folks, we're only human, and we're going to talk about that tonight, is how much we trust ourselves as human with information that's been here on the planet for a very long time. And Jan, before he passes in this reality, wants to help us. And he's going to talk to us about all that he's doing. He came on last year, and we tried to do as much as we could, but it was never enough. So he's going to catch us up in 2020 because we thought he was going to be traveling around like he usually does. And because of COVID-19, and, of course, I had a hurricane here. There's just all kind of global things, as everybody knows. So let's get started. Jan Aldrich with over 50 years in the government, and he's been trusted to the government, and the government trusted him, and they had a good relationship. But, you know, it taught him a lot in the intelligence world and also research and archiving, but not so much as his history maybe in ufology. So I've got some questions lined up tonight, but let's let him talk about being a ufologist and what that means to him. We've got a little bit of his history, and we've got a little bit of history with him and J. Allen Hynek's CUFOS. So, Jan, with a little bit that I've told people tonight, why don't you tell us while we're doing these oral reports here for UFO Association, for all the groups that you and I have known about, and we'll get into Project 47 and then the future. And I don't see anybody yet, so I told them an hour later by mistake. So we're on your time, 9 Eastern, so 8 o'clock my time, folks, 7 Mountain and 6 Pacific. So everybody, I apologize. I re-put it out there on Facebook. But, Jan, over to you now. Let's hear, what are we doing here now as in promoting ufology and UFO Association and scanning to digital, and why is Jan Aldrich using the last of his time? Because you actually had cancer. So there's a lot of details here. So where would you like to start?
Well, the idea is to, when people die, a lot of information dies with them. And unfortunately, in ufology, what happens is, after people die, a lot of their files go to the dump. So if you and this is not the only subject that has that. I've talked to meteor tracers, and they say, yeah, if you want to find files from passed away colleagues, that's where you go to the dump, because people don't think what they did was important. So it's not just us. It's actually people that are involved in regular science or mainstream science that this thing happens. So my idea is to come on shows like this to more or less give some hints about what I've been doing, what I've looked at, tell some stories about things that people can move on with after I pass away. They can take it further the research. And it's an open secret now that the Center for UFO Studies, which was founded by J. Allen Hynek, is now digitizing its files. And I would say maybe 40% of the files have been digitized up to date. I'm working on some of that right now with Barry Greenwood. We're going to have some other people assist us. Besides the CUFOS files, we are also putting our own files up there, so that will increase the CUFOS files. And both Greenwood and I have files from people that have either quit ufology or passed away. So Dr. Willie Smith in Florida, Andy Roberts in England, he didn't pass away, but he quit. Keith Chester did a lot of research in World War II material, but he's gone on to other things, so we have his files. And so all these and dozens of other people have given up their files, and we are putting these in they're being combined with the CUFOS files, so it'll be a pretty big database. And unfortunately, this is the problem. We have a lot of people that have files, not just in the United States. I mean, I've got a database from Pablo Petrovich in Chile, and this is an excellent tool for me to use to get cases. And we've got other various databases in Sweden and some of the other countries. I got one from Germany and one from England, which helped me out. Besides that, we're still collecting information. That's what I've been doing. I've been collecting information for about 50 years now. And so there's big piles of information here that need to be straightened out, and this is one way to do it: digitize it, put it in a digital filing cabinet, and it can be searched and recalled. So Barry Greenwood has just recently, he found a large number of Swedish newspapers online, and even though he doesn't read Swedish, he was able to find keywords and get about 3,000 pages of newspaper stories on ghost flyers, ghost rockets, and UFOs in Sweden. So that is pretty good. And the Brazilian National Archives has a huge collection of Brazilian papers. Once again, neither of us speak Portuguese, but it is possible to screen these newspapers with certain terms. And so Barry is about up to 55,000 news stories from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And the way the Brazilian archives operates, they did not expect their collection to be able to be used in this way. So we have a workaround. We can find the newspapers and search the stories, and then so it's a laborious task. It's not easy. It's not just like, well, click on this newspaper, go to the source, and copy it. It's a little more complicated than that. But we're up to about 5,500 pages, and I think Barry says there'll be 600 before he quits here. One thing we have is when the last time we went to CUFOS, we brought back several boxes of files, and one thing that Barry has is a collection of files, and the Australians are telling me they want to get at this real bad because it's disappeared over there. Apparently what somebody did is went to all the Australian UFO societies and copied all their files by Xerox. And then CUFOS got a copy of that file. Where other copies of that are, nobody knows, but once we start scanning it in, it'll be a good resource, not only for us, but for the Australians. So while this is, I would say, grunt work, in other words, we're not really learning anything, except by accident. I mean, things appear when you start scanning stuff, same dates or other dates, or the content of the story or the location sometimes gives you hints, and sometimes we find an entry, say, in 1947 to an aircraft case, and then we go ahead and keep scanning stuff, and then right next to it pops up the same date and more details. And that's been done a number of times. We're finding more details to cases just by scanning it and putting it in files like this. I would rather be out researching and doing things and analyzing things than doing this, but somebody has to do it, and so it looks like it's on me. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to continue this work and make it available for people later on. I mean, nobody has used the CUFOS files except for occasional inquiries for the last 10 years or so. It's essentially unavailable. We're trying to make it available to people. And since I have a large collection on my own, and I've taken a lot of people's files into my possession, these will be available. So it'll be a huge database or a huge filing cabinet, and people can they will be able to use it in the future. So it will be very interesting to see what happens after that. Of course, I won't be around for that, but some of you will. And I think there are things that will, just by doing data mining and things like that, things will become apparent about the UFO phenomenon just by having this large database which can be quickly searched. In other words, you don't have to thumb through a bunch of folders looking for things.
Well, how do you foresee us? I know you and I discussed open source intelligence, but the new intelligence analysis system has changed for the world with Arno Rooser over in the Netherlands. He's done a good job, and I like his diagram. And just indexing the names. Folks, I'm trying my best to get involved as a prior investigator, journalist, government employee, but I'm all retired from all that. So what I'm trying to do now is just, with the time that I've got now, is to at least bring oral reports from Jan and Barry. We started here, but we're trying to get a who's who, and Jan's been very lenient with my time and his time from scanning, which is his life's mission now. But we would like to get other people, but there's a problem of trust in the universe, and a lot of this information that's been dumped, some people have gotten it and a hold of it, and maybe the librarians, and a lot of us librarians that think like librarians or spend a lot of time growing up in libraries, and then I guess me and Jan got started at a young age. Both our names are Jan. I'm finding a lot of synchronicities with the people's names just involved, including a lot of Barrys and a lot of Jans. Barrys, too. Barry Gonfer is helping me in Kentucky, and Barry Greenwood. I don't even know what state. I've only talked to Barry one time from the CUFOS, getting the information with Jan. But Alien Contact Org in 2014 came to be with Jan Maccabee and not Jan, is it Jan? Dr. Bruce Maccabee, and Jan is his wife. And then we did have Jan in MUFON, and he is stepped down. We got Captain McDonald back in his place. So I've got a lot of work to do just to keep up with the people that are going to be who's who on our timeline while Jan is alive. So he quoted some people, so we have them here, at least on the TJ Morris ET radio will be the way you'll track it into the blog archives. And I've been paying for 8 years here, so we have all of his recordings here. And so you'll have to go back and listen to them. But what do you suggest on this indexing? What about all the names? You and Barry aren't going to have time to, you're just barely got time to scan. Does it automatically, when you scan it into your program, does it scan the resource name? Or, I don't even know how to
the way we've got it set up is we do the date by year, month, and day. Then the location, country, state, and city or area, and then a brief description of what happened. If it's a CE2 or if it's in other words, electromagnetic case or car stalling, that'd be CE2E. And if it's some kind of physical thing that happens to the environment, it would be a CE2M, and that's for physical stuff. And then if it's something that happens to people, like they get paralyzed, their body temperature raises, the hair on their head stands up, they feel heat or cold, that would be a CE2P for physiological effects.
Now, how did you
and then we go ahead and put in the anything that's unusual after that, and if we have room, we put in the witness's case where the thing came from. Okay, CUFOS, or did it come from the earlier outfit called NICAP, or did it come from, say, George Fawcett, or did it come from Barry Greenwood, or whatever? We put the name in there, or so. Richard Greenwell, who was assistant director of APRO at one time. He also had an organization when he was overseas called APRO Brazil, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and it was a Brazilian chapter. Why do I keep saying Brazil? I meant Peru. And so he had contact with military people down there, and I don't have all his files, but I have some of his files. So those are up in his name, and APRO Peru are listed there. So, and if there's room, we sometimes list the investigator if there's room. So we've got those. So you can actually do a lot of different searching just from that little bit of information on the file name.
Wonderful.
You can do a lot of searching, and you can do a lot of searching by date, by location, by type. So that gives you a lot of material to do that. And you know, I just got onto the messaged my colleague in Australia, Keith Basterfield, and I asked him about. I have a whole bunch of cases here from the Northern Territory in Australia from 1998, and I said, you know, I'm not sure I trust these cases here. What's your opinion? And he told me, he says, look, I don't think these guys did very good work up there. He said, but of the cases I've looked into afterwards, they don't make up details. They're pretty straightforward on what they do. They just don't do enough. But he said, so you can use their material. So I said, okay, so I'll start putting it into my into the digital filing cabinet, because because I had some run-in with one of these, the main fellow in Australia, and he was quite he's quite hard to get along with. But
that's going to happen.
But see, what happened is Keith told me, he says, look, I don't think they did a thorough enough job, but they're not making stuff up. They're really, what they investigate is what they have. So it's it may not be the best quality, but it's better than nothing, and the integrity is there. I mean, they're not trying to put something over on us.
Were they law enforcement trained or historians?
No. I think one guy is he's like at a trading post up there. So he has a lot of Aborigine stories. Of course, when you have Aborigine stories, a lot of times it's hard to pin details down.
Well, it is reports. They're Australia Nature, so maybe you can put hashtag A for Australia and AB for Aborigines, but you are using the J. Allen Hynek system. Would you like to explain that to people for your database, or do you want me to cover that in our UFO Association, or just cut and paste it in? How would you like to handle that?
Well, yeah, we use a modified Hynek. Representation for cases. So if it's he had daylight discs, he had night lights, and then he had close encounters. Close encounter 1 was just either in the area of the witness, so that would be, it didn't have to touch the ground, but it had to be close to the witness, and there's apparently no effects on the environment. Close encounter 2 is there's effects on people or the environment or animals, and 3 is when supposed occupants of the UFO are seen. Now people have extended that to like Close Encounters 4, which is a communication or an abduction. So that's fine, and we're interested in aircraft sightings, so when I worked with Weinstein, we used aircraft UFO encounter, AC UFOE, for when air crews or air passengers on airplanes saw something. So that's something we've extended there that Hynek didn't have. And if there's other things, sometimes there's a lot of things going on with a UFO encounter, or a UFO case. So you have like one here. Here's one from France in 1929. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's a French name, but it's in Quebec. Okay. It's an occupant case. There was wind from the UFO. The ground shook, and there's about 2 or 3 other things that happened in this case. It's just too much to put into this. So, but that's what we do it. So people can search that kind of thing. 1935, Uganda. There's a whole bunch of cases that Greenwood found in the Uganda Journal, and this is 1935. This is long before Kenneth Arnold. Lights being seen and objects being seen in the sky. It's just like a regular UFO flap. So, this is the type of thing we do. Okay. Okay, this is a Close Encounter 1. It's a vehicle interference case, a vehicle encounter case. The UFO blocked the road. 1936. That's, everybody thinks that, let's say the public thinks that UFOs started in 1947, but they go back quite a ways.
Well, that's when we started the National Security Council, NSC. I don't know if that's when Majestic 12 was started. Is that what we go by? Because we have the Majestic...
No, we go back to Kenneth Arnold, the first sighting that was publicized worldwide.
Okay.
So he was June 24th, 1947. That's there must have been thousands over the years, probably 10,000s of articles written on Arnold's sighting. There's not a book that doesn't mention him. So this is... Do
you think it was Fate magazine that put him on the map? Do you remember the history?
No, he had his sighting before Fate magazine existed.
All right, I guess I just made it popular for a lot of people, the word flying.
Well, no, the newspapers made it popular. The newspapers are the ones that coined the word flying saucers. He said it was skipping through the air like a saucer thrown over water, and so people, they said flying. The newspaper sort of coined the word flying saucer, and that's where that came from. Now there is a previous nomenclature for flying saucers. Skeet shooters sometimes call the skeet, when it's shot off, they call it a flying saucer. So that has some relationship too. Another Arnold, General Hap Arnold of the Air Force, when he was sending his pilots overseas, if they went by boat, a lot of them went by ship. And so he had them set up skeet shooting in the back of the ship, is to be able to practice their skills when they get in, or keep their skills alive when they got into combat while they were being transported overseas.
You okay there?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if I lost you.
No.
Sorry, I just heard you mention something or something clicked. All right, well, that's great that you're getting this. This gives a little bit of your opinion. I know as investigators, they don't really like our opinion, but every report I wrote for the Judge Advocate General, at the end of my joint, I had my JAG investigation, they let me, the last paragraph was finely tuned to say, it is my opinion that, but I like getting people's opinions because you had a trigger of emotion there, which is exciting because I know to a lot of our people that are in our MUFON or our Alien Conduct Org, they say that people like you and me, they're historian, archivist, nuts and bolts, are boring. But they seem to like Richard Dolan. Rich Dolan, as Kerry Cassidy calls Rich Dolan. I guess he goes by Rich now. I don't know. But you had mentioned Richard Dolan, and I've had him here on the radio show, folks. You can go back and listen to a couple of chats with Richard and Karen, his wife, ex-wife. I haven't had his new wife on, but Janet has. So, Jan, your name is not out there like our good friend that helped me start UFO Association, Stuart, or not Stuart, well, it was George Filer, but the other one that died, Stan. Stan's in my books. We were going to write a book together, but his New York publicist, and he was working with Kathy Martin, so that was back in 2006 when he and I were discussing how we met Jesse Marcel, and then Don Berliner, which you knew about. Did you ever meet Don Berliner, or J. Allen Hynek, or Stanton T. Friedman, who I'm talking about, for the record?
I met Stan, and I met Don Berliner. I never met Hynek. I never talked to Hynek.
Well, I never met Stan.
I tried to talk
Berliner
to him about a case one time, but he wasn't there. So. Well,
I've talked to him on the phones back in the day when we had phones, and they would just miss me on investigations. But the Men in Black, or the different Air Force or Navy, kept us all separate, I guess. But Berliner and Stanton were contractors, if I believe. Now, you understand when I talk whether I was in uniform or out. You understand the difference in, legal investigators, private investigators, government investigators, and then you yourself were intelligence, and as you said, S2 Division Army, but you were artillery. But I was a security manager for my platoon or my group or my, we have so many people, but when I was out in Hawaii, I worked the whole island. I worked the whole sink pack fleet, right, and worked with the Seabees and people coming on with their clearances to get on base. So, which they came to, Pearl Harbor first, right? So, where were you? You were in Germany. You were in ufology before you left for Germany. Is that a correct statement that you were?
Yeah, I was in before I went into the Army.
Let's clear that up because
I was in ufology before I did any. Before I went into the Army.
Let's clear that up for everybody. Can you explain that, please? Because you worked with Don Berliner downtown as a young boy in an office that I already know about. But for the record, would you explain that in 2020? Because ufology has got I'll be honest, when Stanton Friedman and I used to talk, we laughed about ufology until he challenged me to pull up 100 UFO people that I could think about. So one of my assignments in 2006 for the UFO Association was to have a who's who of 100 ufologists, and I couldn't do it. So I guess that's why you and I are here today. And you even said a lot of our ufologists are not known, and you were going to help me with CUFOS get some of these ladies that were in. I like to bring in the lady ufologists. But so go back to your history. Explain, how could you possibly, to these young kids today, be a ufologist before you were even in the Army? I know why, but why don't you give a general explanation, folks?
Well, I'll tell you what. It's just I saw a ball of lightning when I was in junior high. It came out of an oven during an electrical storm, an electrical snowstorm during a blizzard. And it's a little, no bigger than a quarter ball of light that exploded when I opened the oven door. It's like a cherry bomb going off inside. It was really noisy. So I saw that. I asked my father when he came home what it was. He was a chemist that knew a lot about science, and he said, "Well, you want to find out what it was? Go to the library," because I don't know. So that's what I did. I started going to the library, started reading about ball lightning. There wasn't much to read. Then Encyclopedia Britannica said that some meteorologist in the 30s, 1933, a guy named Humphreys, had proved that there was no such thing. Does that sound familiar? He proved that there was no such thing. So, and as I started reading about ball lightning, I started reading about UFOs. So I read Captain Edward Ruppelt's the report on unidentified flying objects. And that got me interested in UFOs. At first I was interested in ball lightning, then I was interested in UFOs. Of course, that's exactly what they think about UFOs. Well, they don't exist. They're just, we're able to explain them all. It's exactly what they said about ball lightning until about the late 50s or early 60s, then people started looking at ball lightning again and saying, hey, there's more to it than we thought. So, I'm like, there was a fellow in the, after Humphreys decided that there was no such he decided he would continue reporting on it in his newspaper column, so people would write him in with ball lightning cases. And he kept that subject alive, and I feel that's what I'm doing. I'm following this guy's trail, or his. I'm trying to walk in his shoe footprints. So I think this is a real phenomenon, and I'm very interested in it, and I've always been interested in it. I was interested before I went into the Army. I didn't have any real experiences in the Army with UFOs. I haven't had any real experience with UFOs. I've seen one or two things that was strange, and I couldn't figure out what they were, and I still can't. But it's not like a lot of people's sightings, which have good, solid information in it. You can do things with it.
When he took my report personally, I don't remember him writing anything down, because I remember him listening intent in the back of the plane. But he already had my report in, because I'd sent in a report in writing. So that would be in his 82 to 85 boxes, or 52 to 1985 boxes. Now, did Willie Smith have those? Those are the famous 4 boxes that had the bulk of the material of the 1960s. And then I was, he knew I was a contactee, and then the government, of course, proved it in their records. But I think that's how he found me, flying on the plane from Lowry Air Force Base to Great Lakes, Illinois. And you asked me if that was before his operation. So he didn't mention an operation. So I was just a young kid. I mean, I was in and out of, I was 33, and I was a rehire back into the government. But I was a private investigator, then a legal investigator, before I was a government investigator. So by the time he got me, they already trained me in and out of country in the European theater in Africa. And then he got me at my second rehire before I went to Fort Hood for the Army S2 Division, which I didn't have any training, I didn't think, in the Army. But the Air Force, they were going to send me to Antarctica. But thank God they chose to send me to Great Lakes, which I would have froze to death. So tell me about the 52 to 85 4 boxes. Do you have those? And can you tell me what you're talking about, his operation? Did you know Willie Smith? 52 to 85. 52
to 80 to 85, you say?
Yes, those are
4
the
boxes. No. Filing cabinets. 20 filing cabinets. How's that?
Wow.
Okay.
Boy, I'm just okay.
Let me put it this way. I am counting what Rodiger has at his house plus what I have here. That's at least 20, 25 filing cabinets.
My goodness. Well, the university
talking about 4 boxes. Hynek left CUFOS. He said he took 1,000 cases with him that he thought were very good. He didn't take any 4 boxes. He took 1,000 cases with him. But CUFOS has 16 filing cabinets. Rodiger's got 4 at his house. So that's 20 right there. I've got I've got 10 filing cabinets here, plus I got boxes and boxes of papers here.
Well,
and I've got I'll tell you what, 4 rooms in my house are filled with UFO stuff, and then I've got a large storage locker. So the amount of UFO stuff in CUFOS and what I've got here is just huge. I don't double it, but I think Greenwood, with the two of us, we double what CUFOS has.
Well, we're going to have to get with these universities because they're putting on the digital age of cyberspace on the Internet what the universities share. And apparently a lot of this is wrong information already in the digital age. So trash in, trash out, folks. So we're putting a lot of trust into people like Jan Aldrich with CUFOS, and I was with CUFOS before I was with MUFON. And not that we have any loyalty, we're nonpartisan. It's not about politics or what's group what, because really I was talking to the people in the 70s, well, actually in the 60s at NASA. We were having meetings back then when they brought, I guess it was APRO before it was MUFON. Is that? So this is a history, folks, of different groups, and Jan's been tracking it. I was born in 1951, December 26, 1951. So I track with the 52 to present with Jan Aldrich. And it was actually Dr. Bruce Maccabee in 2014 that asked me to contact Jan. And it took me, and Jan Harzan with MUFON, when he came on my radio show, he asked me if I knew Jan Aldrich. But I don't know Jan, but I know of his work because of Don Berliner and Stanton Friedman and Dr. Bruce Maccabee, because they were all three investigators. J. Allen Hynek, of course, is the most famous. Then I would say Stanton Friedman. But Dr. Bruce Maccabee is world-renowned. But Jan Aldrich in the physical business is more of the actual ufologist that's practicing. How are we going to describe these for our UFO Association? Because you're doing hard labor scanning, which in the military would be beneath you, because that's what I did. So a GS5 level, and you were at a GS9 or a E9 at least, right? In the Army, what would that be called? Or were you an officer?
No, I was an NCO. I was a master sergeant when I got out.
And isn't that as high as you can go?
No, sergeant major.
Oh, okay. Well, my husband was a master, but he wasn't a sergeant, because that was really, really hard. And you know how you go before, it'd be good knowledge. I wish we had lots and lots of time, but maybe we'll have a few more of these monthly reports before you pass in between your scanning. But, folks, there's so much of the details that some people find interesting. And going before to get your rank even in the military is so interesting, because you'd have to be reading newspapers. They ask weird questions, which I'm sure Jan knows, because he made it to the top almost. There was one more level. That was the hardest ever. And you had to be more than career. I don't know how they make it at the E9. Now, was that Robert O'Dean that Kerry Cassidy and Paula Harris and all those people, the women in ufology, talk about? Because they went to all the UFO, International UFO Congress with, you know what I'm talking about. I never went to any of those. I've never been to a UFO conference. But you know what I'm talking about, Robert O'Dean. Was he an E9?
Yeah, he was an E9.
Okay, so, but you didn't meet him because you didn't
I
go
met
to those...
him, yes.
Oh, you met him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us about that, because he's a famous name that was brought up with Jan, which you know the other Jan of Jan Airlines, me and Jan, in the intelligence world with the Gateway and the Stargates, the portals. Jan Lessin and me do the Stargate in the Monroe Institute, 1983, Fort Meade, and Ingo Swann kind of stories. But now Jan that's here, he didn't work in any of that intelligence or Stargate, but the IUFO Congress has it broke up into what they call nuts and bolts, which Jan Aldrich would be, and people like Janet Lessin that would be more Kathy Martin, psychic therapy talked to the ET contactees. They broke them up. But did you go to any of those? Because you met Bob. So we need to know if you went to any of these for the record, any of these conferences. And number two, where did you meet Robert O. Dean, E9?
I met him at Roswell, at the Roswell Museum. George Fawcett's materials were being transferred to the Roswell Museum. So George and I we hadn't been friends really, but we knew each other and we corresponded. And he had a list of books he wanted to give to Roswell, to the museum. And so there's about $500 worth of books that he wanted that were quite rare. And so I was able to get a lot of those for him. And so I said, Lauren Gross was still writing his UFO history series at that time. And Wendy Connors was doing a lot of work with photographs, recording tapes, videos, and things like that. She was transferring them to other media, from. And so I asked George. I said, "Hey, can we look at this stuff before you send it out?" And he said, "It's already on its way. It's in the trucks. It's being unloaded as we're talking." And he said, "I'll send you a letter to the head of the Roswell Museum and asking that my 3 friends can have complete access to all the files." And so we went there. We each took a copier with us, because this was back in the 90s. Digital stuff hadn't been thought of yet, really. And we spent about 3 weeks there making copies of stuff, things that Lauren wanted to put in his books and things that I was interested in. And Wendy took a lot of stuff that was on cassettes and took them home and put them on CDs and took them back to the museum. So they had them on CDs then, which is the big deal then. So, and she changed over. I think we got her every kind of recording machine, sound recording machine that had ever been invented, including wire recorders. So she could take almost anything and put it on a CD. And that was the idea. She took a bunch of Fawcett's recordings and converted them into CD. So that was when I was there. Dean stopped by the museum, and he told, I guess he was there to see Don Schmidt too. Schmidt was there when I was there, and he was doing a television show. So
that's Don Schmidt, and
yeah.
What did he represent? Arizona?
Who?
Don Schmidt.
No, he was just stopping by. He was just stopping by to see the progress of the museum, that's all.
Oh, okay.
And he also had an appointment to do a TV show there.
Okay, so are we talking about Donald R. Schmidt, the author?
Yeah, who else are we talking about? Come on.
Well, I've got to do I've got to do the grunt work for you, because you're way up there with all these fancy people. I'm down here doing your grunt work at the oral level for you here. All right, so we're talking about Cover Up at Roswell by Donald R. Schmidt, folks. Or Cover Up, or let's see what else he wrote. Inside Area 51. The Children of Roswell, UFO Crash of Roswell. Now, did he write a book at all with anybody else famous?
Yeah, well, Kevin Randall, of course he wrote. He and Randall were a team for the longest time.
Well, tell us about what you know about Kevin D. Randall as a reporter. Did you like him or meet him?
I've met him before, yeah.
You did? Well, you just got around, did you? You must be one of those gumshoe kind of historians. You get around like a spy or a spook, man. Gumshoe.
Okay, so one of the things we do is interview people. Okay. Tom Tulene and he's the head of this organization. It's the Sign Oral History Project. He has over 200 interviews with witnesses, UFO investigators, people from Project Blue Book, just about anybody you can think of. We went ahead and did James Mosley, and he would only do an interview if we agreed to get drunk with him. So
I don't know. Okay, well, that's the good old boy network when you have to get drunk with them. That sounds like a truck driver or military guy.
Well, he didn't know who we were. He said, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing a serious interview with you guys. We're going to get drunk. Okay, so that's what we did. We got drunk. But we got some information on him. We managed to pull some stuff out of him.
Uh-huh.
Now, some of these people want to talk, and some of these people, they don't want to talk until about they're some of them are skeptical. I mean, we did Frederick Durant, and we had done I had interviewed him on the telephone. The Project Blue Book head, God, why is it escaping my Colonel Friend? I interviewed Colonel Friend on the phone. He was very very cooperative and really nice, and he implied, well, when I was the head of the Project Blue Book, we couldn't say very much, so that's why Hynek and I communicated by tape, and we mostly talked about prehistory. What he meant by that was before 1947. And if you cut him, he bled Air Force blue. So he wasn't going to say anything bad about the Air Force. But in 2012, he said, I do believe in UFOs, and I have no problem in saying that now. So, but when I talked to him, he was, and he's a hell of a nice guy. And when I talked to him, it was really interesting. He was a Tuskegee Airman, and so being a black man in the Air Force in the 50s and 60s, you kind of had to watch yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So he knew how to be, navigate that kind of an environment. And I read one fellow's letter that he had gone and talked to Colonel Friend about a sighting he had. He's a fighter pilot. He had a sighting, and he was visiting out there to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he said, I told Colonel Friend about my sighting, and he tried to convince him he was a balloon, that I'd seen a balloon, and I said, I know what a balloon looks like, and it's not anything like that. It couldn't maneuver like that. It couldn't outspeed me. And he put at the end of his letter, this guy is the stupidest man I've ever met. He's talking about Colonel Friend. And I can tell you just from talking to him, this Colonel Friend was a wily old fox. And he knew how to stay out of trouble, and he knew when he could say things and when he couldn't. And, you know, he knew how to maneuver. Like I said, he knew how to maneuver in that environment. And I'm glad that he did come out before he died and said that, yes, I was always, Heineck and I, we already knew what each other were thinking.
Well, what about Willie Smith in Florida? Is that the same Minot Air Force UFO case in Canada?
No, he doesn't have any connection with that.
Isn't that interesting?
He's from Uruguay. He's a physics professor.
Well, we need to get that clarified.
He had his own.
Wilbert Smith of Canada Radio and the Wilbert Smith papers, Dr. Vannevar Bush.
Wilbur Smith.
Wilbert Smith.
You're
papers.
Thinking of Wilbert Smith in Canada.
Right, and that's not Willie Smith in
That's
Florida.
not Willie Smith. That's got nothing to do with Willie Smith. Willie Smith is a real character in ufology, but he was in the Canadian government, and he was the head of Project Magnet for a while, and they used to, even after Project Magnet was gone, they used to send him UFO cases, and I was talking to Chris Rakowski, and I'm saying, hey, I got proof that they were still sending cases to Wilbur Smith in 1957. He said, nah. I said, okay, I'm sending you one. He says, okay, that's interesting, because they had put at the bottom of the UFO case that copy was going to Wilbur Smith. So
how about that?
Yeah.
Now he was okay. Now he that helped start NICAP in '56, right? Major Donald Kehoe's book, The Flying Saucers Are Real. But I know that Wilbert Smith read those, and that guy in Canada, Grant Cameron, has is big on that. But he's gone from, I think he's gone from nuts and bolts over to the conscious science cosmos side to Stargate. Because when I interviewed him on my radio show here, he wanted to talk to me more about Stargates, and I said, well, if the government will let me talk to you about them. You're getting into some deep stuff there, son. So a lot of stuff they are crossing over, even though we had the knowledge in 1983 at Fort Meade, right, with the Army and all of that, but not everybody knew that. So it's going to be interesting, Canadian UFO groups from 50 to 62 with Grant Cameron. But you've got, you don't have the Canadian cases. You've got, well, you have them from all over the world.
I have them from all over the world, but I spent time in Canada collecting UFO information. I met Chris Rakowski. I met Drew Williamson. I met the guys working on Shag Harbor. I met Chris Stiles. Well, I never met Chris Stiles. We have only communicated by telephone and letters. And Don Ledger. I know quite a few Canadians, but I went up to John Musgrave's place up there in Canada, in British Columbia, and he's out in the sticks and the boonies. And I went up there, and he's got a huge UFO file, mostly on Canadian stuff, and he let me copy anything I wanted to when I haven't realized how much I copied when I was up there until I've started this scanning project.
Oh, so you've already got all that.
I didn't really, I was just scanning I was just copying as fast as I could. I'm looking at this stuff and I'm saying, I got file drawers of stuff that he let me copy.
Wow.
So I got more, I just, because I was doing 1947, Project 1947. So I was doing 47. He says, what do you want to copy? I said 47 to 50. He said, well, copy anything you want. So I stayed there for about 2 weeks, and I guess I copied a lot more than I had thought I had. So that was...
well, that's important because up there, they were saying in the magazines, and, of course, after Major Kehoe's, but why in the world would they have clearance level in non-existent flying saucers in any type of clearance, but yet they were finding them in Smith's letters to Vannevar Bush, right? So you probably have a lot of that stuff.
No, I don't think he ever wrote to Vannevar Bush. He wrote some documents that he put top secret on. They were not They were not official Canadian documents. They weren't official. He just put top secret on them.
Wow.
Well, Wilbur Smith. Let's get this straight. Is from the very beginning he was. Even though he was of great help to Kehoe, and I love the Project Magnet stuff,
right?
Because the appendix there has cases from all over Canada and from ferry captains, from control tower people, from meteorologists, from even military. That appendix has a cross reference to people in the transportation department in Canada all over the place. I wish he had kept it up for 53, 54. He just did it for 52. Yeah.
Well, he was a radio
operator. But he was quite. He could function at his job, but he had weird ideas.
Don't we all?
Well, yeah, but going all the way back to the early 50s, he's talking to aliens in his backyard.
Well, maybe in some reality he was, or maybe his conscious level. Remember, the government doesn't poo-poo that. So I need you to read that Gateway in 1983.
I read Smith's correspondence. What I'm telling you is the truth.
Okay, I believe you. So at that time, finding of facts.
I've got a big file on Smith here. And his Kehoe, he was very helpful to Kehoe. He gave Kehoe hints, and he told him, he was a functioning person in the Canadian government, and one of the things he did was he got this highly luminous flare and tied it onto a big balloon and had it go over, I think it was Ottawa, to see how many reports of UFOs he got. And he said, it was super bright. It was brighter than anything in the sky at the time, I think, except maybe the moon. And he got no reports. So that's an interesting experiment. But in other things, he was not quite all there.
Okay, well, we're going to have to do a whole show on all of that. You know way too much information. Well, since we've been talking about Donald Kehoe, let's go, and Stanton Friedman, let's sort of put all that together with J. Allen Hynek, Edward Ruppelt, and Jacques Vallée. Now, you didn't meet Jacques Vallée, or however you want to say it. I don't know. How do you
say
say
I met
Jacques
I met Jacques Vallée several times.
Well, let's talk about that, because these are important names. You're just the
no meetings with Jacques Vallée were really very interesting.
But you were first-hand information for our UFO Association. But, folks, this is one of the director and founders based on his recommendation. Dr. Bruce Maccabee was having health issues, and we don't discuss those. But during the times with History Channel and Prometheus Entertainment and all that, Richard Dolan and Dr. Bruce Maccabee, a lot of these people. But we're talking about people really before History Channel, and Stanton Friedman helped me establish this radio station. He was the first one to come on for me. That MUFON, the director now of MUFON, Campbell, came on, but Stanton Friedman. No, Campbell just, did he come on? Well, anyway, but these are people before Stanton, would be Donald Kehoe, Edward Ruppelt, but Jacques Vallée. Now, people, if you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you've heard mention of everybody but maybe Stanton. But Jan was out there doing all this stuff, and but Jan wasn't in the show. But have you been referred to at all in Blue Book? Because that's where you came into my life, and you said they were doing, I didn't even know it. I think you and Barry informed me about Project Blue Book on History Channel. I didn't even know about it or something. But tell us about these people. You met Jacques Vallée, and we're dropping the name of Ruppelt and Kehoe, so we need to sort of...
Well, I never met Kehoe.
That was before.
Yeah, I went to NICAP at least 12 times, and I never met Kehoe. He was never there when I was there.
And Ruppelt died in 1960, so I know you didn't meet him because you were still a little boy.
I didn't meet Ruppelt, no, and I didn't meet Kehoe.
Yeah, he died in 1988. So
yeah, I didn't meet him, but that was only because he spent most of his time at home, or he had an office out in Luray, Virginia, and he would come in there maybe once or twice a month. And he ran it as an absentee thing, and that caused a lot of problems.
Well, we all do.
Not to say anything about Kehoe, because he kept the thing alive. He spent all his money on NICAP. His family was he really sacrificed a lot about his family for NICAP, because he put a lot of his own money into it. And of course, here's Vallée and Hynek saying, well, he's a money bank and he's just in it for the money, and any money he ever got from UFOs he put right back into NICAP. He was.
Well, why did they not put that out there with NICAP?
Why didn't they put it out there? Because they didn't want to listen, and they didn't want to learn.
Wow.
Because it's more fun to be ignorant.
Well, and that's part of history with the History Channel, and not to put down Hollywood, but this sort of triggered you because, everybody knows that, and we talked about that, even you and I mentioned it was odd that Richard Dolan, the character that played J. Allen Hynek, looked like Richard Dolan. That was just a coincidence, folks. But, a lot of people now are getting a lot of the press and the television credit, and people are going to go down in this reality in the next 20 years thinking they're the people that made all this happen. But it goes way back before we were here. There were Edward Ruppelts and Donald Kehoes and Stanton Friedman, J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée. And
we did it. Tom interviewed
Jacques Vallée,
Lieutenant. God, I can't think of his name right. Anyways, Ruppelt's Lieutenant Olson, who was in charge of Project Blue Book for part of 53. And he did interview Airman Max Futch, who was Ruppelt's main clerk. And I got a lot of stuff that Ruppelt had written on their Max file. So, you know, he wanted him to file his stuff.
Well, do you have authors like Don Schmidt or Kevin Randall, reporter, or Jacques Vallée was a computer scientist, but we haven't discussed him yet. But a lot of these old people were in the Air Force or military folks, and they, you know, J. Allen Hynek got the contract from the Air Force till, 83? But, you know, we got to pull all this together because the UFO Association, all I can commit to is helping Jan with various projects that he's involved in, but we're trying to get it on oral history so you guys can at least find us on the internet while the people are going to have the thumb drives and their own files. But we're getting into blockchain, and we don't know how we're going to be able to fund the big database for all this. We're trying to figure all that out, folks. So if you got any philanthropists in the UFOs, ufology, alienology, cryptozoology, fortean, what do we call, you know, paranormal. But we're trying to pull it all together because it's about indexing now and hashtags and blockchain history and how we're going to pay for all the future databases. So right now, Jan's still dealing with all these old guys before him and all the collections, you know, for all of these. So are you including authors and reporters or no? Just
yeah, we talked to all kinds of, we talked to 200 people. Well, I didn't. Tom does. Tom has interviews with 200 people.
Well, tell us who Tom is.
So Tom Tulina, and he's in Minnesota, and he's part of the UFO history group, and he was what he told me was he had worked for Greer, and he was in my area, and he got my number, and he called me up, and he said, "Can we meet to talk about UFOs?" So I didn't know who he was, and then he told me right off, "Well, I've been working for Dr. Greer," and I says, "Oh my God, tell me it isn't." So I said, "Why?" I'm thinking to myself, "Why did I come out and meet this guy?" You know, we talked for about 4 hours, and he told me, he said, right from there I was hooked. I knew I had to do something important in ufology, and I said, "Well, I'm happy to hear that, but you know, I probably would have come to that by yourself sooner or later." So then, what we used to do is we find people, we'd ask them if they would interview with us. Well, some people wouldn't, like Janae, the guy that wrote the 1952 Life magazine article, "Have We Visitors from Outer Space?" He wouldn't interview with us. So that was a interview we didn't get. And Major Dewey Fournay, he kept putting us off until he died. So we didn't get to interview him either. But we got to interview Bill Pitts, who was a good friend of Fournay. So sometimes we were able to work around that. Tom interviewed Max Futch, who had been Ruppelt's clerk, and like I said, he interviewed Olson. So we were able to interview a lot of people and we interviewed a lot of UFO witnesses too. So that's how we found out about the Minot case. Because this guy had written in the CUFOS, and he said I was his name was Runyon, he was a captain, and he had been the pilot when the UFO incident happened. And I think I've told this before, you know, we looked up the case in Blue Book, Now, there's lots of information in Blue Book, but he had more information than was in Blue Book, and I'm kind of wondering, what the heck is this? You know, it was such a nice day. My mind's kind of wandering, you know, and he's telling us all this amazing stuff, and I'm saying, how are we ever going to prove this? And is there any other witnesses? And we asked him, well, who was on the crew? Who were the other people on the crew? I think he knew one name. And then he went into his filing cabinet, and he had a picture from the time he was at Minot. And everybody was standing out in front of the B-52 at Parade Rest, and you could read all the names on the uniforms. And so then we just went through the last names, and then he knew the first names and everybody's name just because that triggered his memory. And we were able to get in touch with everybody that was alive and interview them. And that was just an amazing thing. Tom did most of the interviewing, and I did the first one, and I said, this is such an amazing case. It is beyond anything that I had heard of till that time. And so that's where the Minot case came from. And it should have been out earlier, and I think it would have destroyed the Condon report if it got out at the time or shortly afterwards. In fact, somebody had sent NICAP a copy of, or had sent him a summary of the Minot case with the radar photographs. And Keogh and Lohr had been let go at that time, and Stuart Nixon didn't have enough imagination to figure out what that letter said. And so it just languished there until we went out and talked to Captain Runyon, and that was just fantastic. And then it was on ABC television. ABC didn't believe that. That's what the guy told me. I was talking to a guy from ABC when they were doing their Peter Jennings special. He said the first mission of this special, he said we didn't want to do a UFO thing. We wanted to do something about life from other planets, but the UFO thing just took over the program.
What happened to
and then he says, I'm talking to him, and he kept calling me up, and we talked about the CIA, and he says, well, I don't think the CIA is, we don't find that the CIA is involved to the extent that a lot of people think it was. And I said, anything that I tell you, I hope you check it. And he said, the only reason I keep calling you is because we do check, and everything you said has turned out true.
Oh, good for you, Jan.
I was getting calls from 3 producers on that at one time. One would call me, and then an hour later another guy would call me, and then this woman would call me. And as far as the Minot case went, they went and reinvestigated everything we did. Like I said, the thing was, don't embarrass Peter Jennings. So they went and reinvestigated the whole case again from scratch.
Yeah.
And then Peter Jennings had, he used, I think it was 5 minutes. It may have been less. He used 5 minutes on his newscast one night with this case. And then it was about a fourth of the Peter Jennings special on UFOs. They did enough research on UFOs that they could have had 10 programs. It's unfortunate they didn't do any more on it.
My husband mentioned Peter Jennings and one other guy coming out in the field while he was working for Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell, right? Colin Powell. You worked over there during that same time frame. So I was 80-93 in and out of government uniform, but 67, May 67, and I was flown to Washington May 87, and out of country and back in several times. But so let's get people the years. Now, we were discussing you were a ufologist before the Army. So, and you had 50 years of service in uniform and out with the U.S. Postal Service. And you met Jacques Vallée when? So let's get your years. And then tell me if you can remember.
I met him in 95, and I met him up here in Connecticut. And, none of it was satisfactory.
Well, he was the one bringing in a lot of the, they say CIA, Army, whatever, S2, it doesn't matter.
No, that wasn't the reason.
Well, Jacques Vallée's had a lot of good stuff. I mean, he liked
Yeah, sure. Nobody denies that. I was on my Project 47 trip across the country. I was on my about 5th or 6th leg, I think it was. And I had been in Montana, and my next stop was Boise, Idaho. Now, I'd been to the University of Idaho at Moscow.
Wow.
Idaho twice.
Moscow, Idaho?
Yes, that's where the University of Idaho is. And that's just a treasure trove of UFO information there as far as newspapers go.
Well, that's a good thing to know, right?
So I was going to Boise, Idaho, and I was going to try to talk to people in Boise, and I got this call from Ed Stewart out on the West Coast. He said, Vallée's agreed to open his files if you come and see him. I'm saying, Ed, I don't want to do this. I'm going to Boise. It's one of the most important places on my trip here. I've got to go there. He says you got to do it. He says I already talked to Barry Greenwood, and he's going to open up his stuff for Vallée to look at it. You can open up your stuff, and I says, well, okay. So I said, I'm not going to Boise, but it's on your head. And he says, I'll beat the heck out of you if this is useless. And so we met with Dr. Beckman and Ed and I and Vallée asked me what I'm doing, and I said I'm going through newspapers, kind of like Amy Michel did in France. He knew what that was like, and he says, well, what are you going to do with this information afterwards? And I said, well, you can filter it in a number of different ways, and filter it more than once, different ways. And Ed Stewart had been in Brazil, been born in Brazil, as a matter of fact, and he spoke Portuguese just like Brazilians do. So he understood all the dialects and stuff like that, and so he got talking to Ed about, well, I got a whole bunch of Portuguese publications, I'll send them out to you. And he left, and Beckman stayed there and talked to us for a while. And what is it? Mind control and this other stuff, and I'm not interested in any of that stuff.
Oh, come on. That's my field, too.
So I'm saying this is a completely useless meeting. I could have been in Boise right now in the Historical Society, the newspaper. and a half a dozen other places I wanted to visit and people I wanted to talk to. Here I am. I got I had a lunch with these guys, and the absolute what I got out of it is absolutely zero.
Oh, come on. Are you
and so, no, I got zero out of it. And Ed got a few publications that were contemporary Brazilian UFO stuff, and it was really, it was god-awful. Well, I can see why Vallée wanted to get rid of him.
Yeah, but Jacques Vallée...
There was there was no reason to meet with him. There was no information that was exchanged that was any good. There were no ideas that were planted that was any good. It was just a useless meeting. And then the next time I met with him, it was another useless meeting.
Now, are we talking about the same Jacques Vallée that was in the movies with Steven Spielberg?
You know.
Really?
I sent him a copy of my book afterwards on the 47 flap. We haven't communicated at all.
But you have the problem with the neuro or the conscious level of the many worlds of the
I don't care about somebody saying that they can control your mind. Get out.
Okay.
And that is Beckman's idea. Beckman, I think, had crossed over into silliness at that time.
Now, you remember 1983, we had the assessment, right? And we had Star Wars with Reagan. That's all my era. It's your era. So if I was working with UFOs and Hynek, we had the other side of that. That's the part he wanted me involved in to tell the story. With people like you.
At this time, Hynek and Vallée had separated. They'd gone their own ways.
I know, but you've got to listen to me because I wouldn't steer you wrong with what my experience is. In 1983 at Fort Meade, our assessment was that Monroe Institute had a valid point. The radio guy with the radio airwaves. And this wasn't MK Ultra in Canada. It wasn't, throwing people out of windows. So, but you got to get that all the, intelligence agencies knew already that we were behind on that from Sputnik and Russia. And the reason we were all interested in the neuro levels with the consciousness is what we're doing now. And we had already seen in the medical field, which I hated, like you hate to go, you're a nuts and bolts person, so you hate dealing with the mind. Well, I came into this life with special gifts and able to twirl fire batons and twirl batons and knives and machetes, and the government recruited me in 1967. I didn't know that was the intelligence agency out of Washington, D.C., or NASA, or that NASA was the old CIA. They controlled NASA back then. If you study the history, I didn't know any of that. So it wasn't until 80 to 83, and I went to Rochester, New York, and I saw the UFO, or the big bright light, and then two red things shoot out of it. Now, this was before we had drones, but I was told we didn't have that technology inside uniform, but that's what I was sent after. And J. Allen Hynek knew he'd read my case files in the intelligence agency. So I'm trying to put all this together with you, Jan, because we were serving. And the Army, you were in the Army in 83.
Yeah, but I'm a field artillery guy.
I know.
I mean, I was an intelligence sergeant, but my MOS is meteorology. I am not an intelligence guy. I learned to do that.
Well, so did my husband.
I learned to do personnel. I learned to do safety.
I did too.
They put you where you want to, and then you have to sink or swim. So.
Well, I did the same thing.
I was not an intelligence person. I was an intelligence sergeant in the. I was security and intelligence because they told me that's
Well, they told
we need an intelligence sergeant here, so you're it.
Well, they told me if anybody asked me what I did, I worked for the State Department. I couldn't even tell people who I worked for, in uniform or out. I tried to tell them when I was walking around Hawaii and Navy, and Air Force got me in trouble. I didn't know I was being watched all the time by intelligence officers and stuff. Man, you couldn't say shit in or out of uniform with what I did, which I didn't understand because nobody trained me. I had to go on the job and on-the-job training, and everybody was under investigation. So I'd become the security intel officer to get their badges, or ComNav base, or OpNav, or SyncPac fleet. Even the guys that were coming on board, I was the highest person with the highest clearance level at one time in Hawaii. That was blowing my mind. The guy that was going to be in charge of the whole Hawaii island had to go through me to get his clearance. He had a lot to say about that too. So, it's crazy what they do to people at the enlisted level, and they just throw us into jobs and tell us to do it. But see, you can help me with that, because we've got to put this inside CUFOS and all these files, because they're not going to make sense if you follow chain of command only, or if you think you're looking for, say, Project Stargate, or Project Gateway, or Project Magnet, or Project Pegasus. And, people are going to start looking for that because they believe what they see in television. And if you go into intelligence files, you're pretty much FOIA. Why don't you explain that? Because even Freedom of Information Act, you've got to pretty much already know the question as to the key code word, hashtag today. Kennedy, it doesn't mean you're going to find anything, but UFO. But CIA was nice enough to put under UFO files in FBI for a while, FBI files. Did you go grab those while they were open source, the FBI and CIA files?
Yeah, I got files that other people don't even know about. Look, the FBI, and they destroyed a lot of files too. The FBI headquarters files are up on the internet right now. You can look at those things.
And the ones the CIA, and a lot of them in the CIA.
Yeah, the CIA
library.
stuff is up there too, but there's also other files that they had to FOIA to get them out of there. Like there's 1949 Navy document that tells you a lot about what happened in 1948, including the estimate of the situation that everybody is always wild about. You can't talk to UFO people in a common sense area with it. They're so sure they already know all the information. So we do not have the estimate of the situation. But this Navy document that the CIA happened to have, that Brad Sparks got, talks about the conclusions and some of the cases. It's an evaluation by the Ordnance Bureau in the Navy. So that gives you clues about what the heck was going on with the estimate of the situation. And like I told you before at the beginning when we started talking, by having this filing system,
that you've
things
set up.
Things fall into the same date, and you can see relationships that you can't see if you just got a bunch of files that haven't been filed, or even if you're looking at a lot of file folders with you've got to open everything up and look at it, and that's what this helps you do. So there's a lot of things that happened at I'll tell you one. Larry Fawcett, who was a police officer here, he left the force and he decided he was going to do UFOs. And he and Greenwood they worked together on a cause newsletter. So Larry Fawcett found this guy down in Florida, and he had been on the USS Philippine Sea, and he had some documents. He said, "I'm not supposed to have these documents. I kept them. They were copies." And I said, And so he said, "Yeah, in 1952 I was in Korea on the USS Philippine Sea. I was in the CIC. I was one of the they didn't call him ship leaders, but that's essentially what he was. So he was. They had a UFO case, and he was there when it happened. And this is when the Navy during the Korean War decided to take serious what these UFO reports were coming to it, because they had met with a guy named Bush, who was the Air Force. One of his jobs was to do radar stuff, and he was a radar expert. But his main job was just to he did a lot of staff planning and stuff, and he was with the Air Technical Intelligence Liaison Office over there. And he was the point of contact for all radar UFO cases that came up. And when he at staff meetings, he would make notes about all the UFO cases that came up at these meetings. And so they had 50, 51. They had radar cases, but they'd never have a visual and a radar case together. The Navy had. So the Navy more or less said, we don't think there's anything to UFO cases like this. And then the Philippine Sea case was they had a radar and a visual sighting of the same thing. Now, that got the Navy thinking that there's something to this after all. At this time, Bush like I said, he'd been keeping notes on all these radar cases that the Navy had and others, and he put them together in a big intelligence report. It's on my website. You can go read it if you want. It's got, and he put it so you could, each page is a different case. So, like he said, you can here's my radar report, and you can file these cases separately by pulling out the pages. He did the same thing for visual UFO stuff, but we don't have that.
Well, he wrote a book with Larry. He wrote the book Clear Intent, but they redid it, didn't they, with Barry Greenwood?
No, he wrote the book with Greenwood. Clear Intent. Yeah. They wrote the book together.
And then that's in paperback, folks. And then the UFO cover-up, what the government won't say. Is
the UFO cover-up is just the second printing. They just changed the title on it.
Well, Barry J. Greenwood, who we're talking about, was Lawrence Foster, Foster, and they're personal friends of Jan, so maybe he'll bring them on.
No, I'm sorry, Larry has passed away a long time ago.
Okay, yes.
But he was still alive when I was talking to him. So he's talking to this. He's talking to this Navy commander, and this guy tells Larry. He says, "Well, I've got these documents, and I don't know what to do with them." And I said, "Could you get him to read you some of the like the titles of the documents?" So he did. I said, "I think I have these." Hynek had these in his files. These things are declassified. He said, "You don't have to worry about it." So he said, "Okay, but I still don't want my name." I have his name. I checked his background. Everything he said about his background is actually all the classes he went to. You can look up any Navy officer a military officer that's a career guy.
Yeah.
You can look up there who they are, what schools they've been to, and everything, if you know how to do it.
You think all my books are crazy, or you don't even care about my books, right? You know I'm just a journalist. You don't care about my woo-woo books, huh?
What book is this?
Knowing Cosmology, Ascension Age 2012 and Beyond, Spirituality, Aliens and UFOs, Uplifting the Soul. I don't even talk about my books, Jan. They were just most of my articles I wrote for UFO Digest. They recruited me out of Canada. When I'd go, my own country would when I'd go into Canada and they'd tear my stuff apart, and then my own government would tear my stuff and keep my. I was like, guys, y'all are the ones putting me in and out of country. Come on. But they went through everything. So my stuff is. They wouldn't let me. Reporters talk about me. My poor little daughter's husband went to a host cow overnight at Fort Hood for trying to find out about me, and he was in the Army in uniform with his lieutenant, and they locked him up just for trying to find out my name in the computer. So nobody was able to find out who I was, and I don't know that level. I do know that the German, when I was working with J. Allen Hynek, came and told me that for now they had cleared me at Q because of that Edward Ames or whatever, Dames or Ames coming in.
Aldrich Ames?
Yeah, I think that's his name. But something to do with clearance levels, but I was already cleared in 1967 through NASA and Washington, D.C. And then they cleared me again, Washington, D.C. as a rehire at the national intelligence level, right, May 10th, 1987. I had to do another retina scan, polygraph, psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist asked me about being a Latter-day Saint because we're good spooks in and out of country, and then also if I had any trouble with them buying my contract, the intelligence community. I said, I don't care. So why should I care? They were going to buy my Navy contract, which I guess they did. But they said I'd never be out of service to my country. But I guess you have to die. I don't know. I don't know whether to believe them or not. They tell you weird stuff during those meetings in Washington. But as far as I know, they retired me with 50 years, December 26, 2017. Now, let me ask you this. You were in the Army long enough. Back in the day, I came in the second as a rehire 4x10, which I know you know what that means. But when they put me back through as a rehire, and they told me that since I came in on a leap year, I signed the paper on 4/29/85 that they extended my contract for 8 years times 4 was 32 years. Do you believe that? You think legally they can do that? Because I don't know.
I don't understand you. I don't understand your background because you keep telling me you're half the time you were civilian and half the time you were in the military. I can't tell you. What,
I was. All right. Well, there's.
So I can't tell you what you know.
Yeah, well, that's what I don't understand. The military and the civilian. If I was OPM,
if you're an enlisted guy, the usually what you could do is you can re-up for 6 years, but then you can re-up again, and then you can re-up again. So that's maybe what people do. I don't know.
Well, what they did was said because the second time was a trick. They rehired me on leap year. That's what screwed my head up. Is they said they were 8-year contracts per year. I just know what they told me. So I had a 32-year contract as a rehire. That was in uniform, but they just wanted me to train Joint Chiefs of Staff, join at a Pentagon, right? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, you wear all the uniforms, Sea or Mariner program. It's real easy to track. It's so they don't have to give you any benefits. They put you in as training only, but they want you to train, So that's where J. Allen Hynek comes in, right? Because he was at the Air Force But he moved in 83.
He was just a consultant. He was just a
well, that's why I don't get why
he was a consultant, and he wasn't in charge of anything.
No, but
at first he didn't know how to game the system, but as he stayed in longer, he gamed the system, and he was able to get the whole Project Blue Book stuff files so he could look through every page of it.
I know, but when did he have that operation before he died? You know him from Willie Smith here in Florida. So Willie Smith. Now we should have covered that. We went from Wilbert Smith to Willie Smith.
I'm not sure where he had the operation. I think it's 88. I think it's 88. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I didn't. Like I said, I never had any dealings with him. I dealt with Rodiger. I dealt with Timmerman. I dealt with Eberhardt. I didn't deal with him.
But you did Berliner, so that's the common name, and Maccabee. Now, how do you know Bruce? Because Bruce is the one that... Are you kidding me?
I don't know Maccabee, no.
You don't know Dr. Bruce Maccabee?
I know who he is. I don't know him. I never met him. Well, I met him. I met him at Foo Force stuff. He used to play the... He would play... He would play music for us at the when they'd have a party or something.
Yeah. No, so no.
I never talked to him. I talked to guys like Carlson and Dick Hall, and
we're gonna get people mixed up with you and me. Folks, we'll just be clear because me and him are tired. 2 hours is a long time, but
I'm not mixed up at all. I know the people I met and stuff like that.
All right.
I never met Bruce Maccabee. I mean, we've talked to but it's just a nodding acquaintance. Yeah, okay, nodding acquaintance. I don't know. So
I apologize.
Yeah, so it's not. I don't. His wife was on. She can't stay on Facebook because they keep throwing her off. They don't like her politics.
Well, all of us in journalism are supposed to be nonpartisan, but she's not a journalist, so she's got a right to her own opinion. Everybody does.
Yeah, but they keep throwing her off, so that's she is. She's a Facebook friend. Let's put it that way.
All right. Well, she's a Jan, and I was a Jan, and I love you, and I can't explain it. So that's why I put you in the J, Allen, because you're with CUFOS, and the card he gave me, I could swear it had CUFOS because I remember him telling me to send in my report, which I did.
Well, so like I said, I never knew him.
Oh.
It's just like Keo. I used to go to NICAP. I went to NICAP 12 times. I do volunteer work for him. I know Dick Hall. I know Diana Sinclair-Knopp. I knew Isabel Davis. I knew Gordon Lohr. And Don Berliner. I know all the people that work there. I never met Keo.
Yeah, and you know some of the MUFON people that have been on this radio show, too. That lady, darn it, I forgot her name. She's a real sweet lady with MUFON, and she knows your name. And, well, anyway, folks, we're getting old, and I apologize. I don't mean we're mixed up, but I'm tired, and I know you are. But can we do this again on our at least monthly? I know it's hard weekly, but you tell me what you want to do, Jan, because I'm going to build.
You want to do another show? We could do one, sure.
Okay. Well, thank you, but I don't know if you want to go 2 hours, but yeah,
sure.
Information.
There's nothing wrong with this.
Okay, Fridays, every Friday, or no? Because Jan at Lessin wants to do some with us, but she don't like what you and I, archivists and historians and ufologists do.
Well,
she wants to see. I mean, we get the facts. She wants to talk to all the ET contactee and Kathy Martin, Denise Stoner, and you know that side of the story. So I don't care, but you tell me. Is Fridays good? Is because
Fridays are good. Fridays are okay.
All right. How about next Friday? Or you want to do a Saturday or Sunday? Or I want to keep you involved because UAP-associates, folks, is going to grow by people. They got rid of, Tom DeLonge, I don't know if he's been silenced or not, but that's Stargate, Star Academy of the Stars. And, I don't know. Richard Dolan is a historian, but his name's out there because he's done a lot with History Channel and UFO Congress. And he's been over here at Arkansas. And, there's a Dolores Cannon level and the truth and the Ascension Age level. There's all levels in the brain side. So you're not into all that Jacques Vallée stuff, folks, parallel
it's
worlds.
It's not Jacques Vallée, no. He's got a thing that there's a control mechanism in UFOs that are, listen, I don't want to say what his theory is. He can say what his theory is. I just do not. From what he had to say and what Beckman had to say, I don't have any use for it.
All right. Well,
he didn't really talk about his theory. The only thing I have to say about Jacques Vallée is both times we met, it was to me unsatisfactory because we couldn't work out any kind of cooperation or anything like that. Now, there's other people that think that, Brad Sparks and Larry Hatch and Lauren Gross, they were all very friendly with Jacques Vallée.
Well, we're going to have to separate parallel worlds because that's where we're going in quantum physics, in consciousness and mindfulness. I'll deal with it, but Jan is the nuts and bolts guy. But
you keep saying that, and you're wrong.
Okay, well, good. Thank you. I'll tell Janet Lessin that I
am not going off on kind of tangents. Dick Hall looked at a lot of abductees, and I've met a lot. I've met a number of them, and I've talked to them, and actually we've interviewed a couple of them.
So you're open-minded, and I know you are because. We'll have
at the end of the day, you can get I'm not scanning any abductees stuff here. I'm not, because some of it is as big as 2 Chicago phone books, but it says nothing in the end. You get nothing out of it. You can read it. You can read through all these investigations and hypnotists and all this other stuff, and at the end you get nothing.
Okay.
There is no the UFO people, even underneath the whole business, they don't communicate anything. And I've talked to abductees, and they said everything they tell you, if they tell you anything, because some people remember getting told things. I said everything they tell you is a lie.
Oh wow!
And they agree with me. Yeah, they lie to us. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, what does that get you? Now, the reason I don't scan this, I've already talked to this with Rodiger, and we've decided not to do this. There's too much personal information in abductees' files when they get it. They try to go all the way back to when they were a little girl, and when's the first time you wet your pants in school? When you were a little girl.
Therapy. They're doing the healing process as part of
therapy. No. They're doing this. They think they can find something in their background. That's what it is. And I'm saying this is not healing. This is bullshit. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. When abductees start spouting anti-Semitism, which Dick Hall had to back off for a while. He said, "Listen, if you guys are going to say, He said the space people don't care about Jewish people. They are not anti-Semitic.
Let me explain something really quick, Jan, for the
record. You're going to if you're going to somehow tell me that somebody comes from out there and they already hate the Jews, I am going to tell you, you are crazy.
No, I wasn't going to tell you that. No, I was going to tell you that there's two trains of thought of the Kabbalah, as whether it's really the Tree of Life or the 12 groups or 12 tribes of Israel, or the Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. So that's the big war now in the world is supposedly that's why they're ruining all the statues and stuff in Iraq, is because that's supposed to be intelligent generated. I'm just saying the hearsay. I'm not saying I believe it. That's why they call me and you nuts and bolts, because we only get the facts. We're more scientific logic, but they want the whole story. In other words, the essence of quantum physics. So that's what they're comparing with the dimensions and it's the many world theory, parallel worlds. So it goes with all that. But no, I'm not, we're not, there's all kind of colors of people on the planet and off planet. So,
yeah, okay.
I don't know how to document that, but that you've got to admit, though, in ufology. Will you at least let me do the alienology part for us? Because you can't bring UAP. I'm trying to be UAP-associates. But I've got all these people want to fight with each other, and I've got to be nonpartisan as a journalist. Everybody's separating. There's always two sides in the truth, is what people told me. But you tell me how we're going to do this, Jan. You know what I'm saying. I agree with you. You're right about the Semitism stuff, or anti.
I mean,
you're right.
There's not anybody that thinks that as far as ancient aliens go and all that other stuff,
well, I have to
there's several people in the group that know most more ancient history than I do, and I love ancient history.
I do too.
And these people are pre-UFO that are talking about the Anunnaki or whatever the freak they are. This goes back prior to UFOs. Let me tell you, this is a group up in New York City that used to. Everybody thinks that 10,000 BC, the movie, was somehow that's the way things were, and that's a craziest thing. It's a movie.
It's Hollywood spin, folks.
Yeah, it's Hollywood spin, and
well, we'll have to allow for the Comic-Cons and the UFO cons and the X-cons and the, I don't know what all we got. I got Cosmos Expo and, but we're going to do clubs and labs and all that. But Ace Folklife is folk life and folklore and culture. The Smithsonian, when I was doing Appalachia, we were taking people, but they wouldn't let me film them. Now I'm watching a guy that does White Underbelly on YouTube, and he was able to get videos of Appalachias, But he's also got some KKK and some prostitutes and people inbred. I don't know how he did it, but he helps a lot of people on the street people too. I forgot his name. He's a photographer, but you'll have to catch him. He's in Patreon. Well, folks, Jan's agreed to come back. Now, I've got him with my UAP associates, but I'm not letting just anybody in there because I've got too many people fighting in all my social media groups as it is. I can't even get good moderators anymore. They sell me out. Jan, on one of our UFO groups, one girl came in under a false name, and people believed who she was and came in and convinced friends, even Ken Johnston. But Ken told on her, and she turned out not to be the real lady. That wasn't her real name. She called me crazy on the radio show you were on, and I was like, I'm not the crazy one. I'm the one telling the truth. You know, I've got the credentials. Her name was Chant Hannah. That's not even her real name. You've been on her show, that UFO Sunday Report. But she started all kind of civil war inside MUFON and, oh my God, all kind of KGRA. And
well,
KGOR.
That's the way of this subject. It's full of people that would rather they don't want to cooperate together.
No, they're not even using real names, and Facebook's letting them get away with it. So they attack Tommy Hawk's
there's so many pseudonyms on Facebook. It's unbelievable.
Yep. Well, I hope that we can be real, folks. And Jan Aldrich, as far as I can see, I haven't done a LexisNexis on him, but I didn't see a reason to. So, I can do a deep dive on him, but still no need. He'll tell me whatever I need to know. So Jan's not about hiding behind any false names. You were born with that name, and I was born with Theresa Jeanette Thurmond. That's my legal born birth certificate American. Now, you are American, right? You have a birth certificate that says Jan Aldrich or Jan some. What's your middle name?
Yeah, I do.
You have a middle name?
Yeah.
Did you already tell us? So you want to share that?
Lucian.
Is Jan your middle name?
Yeah. Some people don't have a middle name.
Well, what was your
My
first
sister
name?
doesn't.
Was it Gustav or something like that? I forgot. I'll go back and find it. Your first name?
Jan.
That is your first name?
Yeah, it's a variant of John.
Okay. Well,
Europeans half the people in Europe are named Jan, or they're not named. If they're not named Juan or Eon or a half a dozen other variants, it's John. It's
Terry.
John. I keep trying to tell. I keep trying to tell my my son's wife, father, that his name is Juan, and I said, well, my name's Jan, so we both John, and he just looks at me like I'm weird.
Well, yeah, and when I was had a lot of people in Houston coming from Arab countries, and I'd tell them my name was Jan, they would say, well, why you have a boy's name? I'm like, what? So they
Southwest Airlines, they couldn't figure out that I was a male.
Yeah, it's strange. They thought, well, the Europeans...
They weren't going to let me on the plane because they said, nobody has a name like that. I said, you son of a gun? I said, I'm going to call a manager right now.
Well, I've used TJ like a man's name because Theresa Jeanette is the name I was born with. But in the military, I went by Terry. But my whole life, I was called Jan. My mother was...
If you go into the military, you can be any name you want to.
Well, I went by Terry. And that's
but I'm saying, if you went into the military, you could be any name you wanted to. When you sign up, there's a place. It says, what name do you want to use while you're in the military?
Not in 85.
You can make up a name. It's called nom de guerre.
They wouldn't let us.
Yes, they would. It's right on your enlistment thing. It says, what name do you want to be? What name do you want to use? And you just put. I didn't know that at the time. I would have used a different name.
Well, they were really hardcore on us.
No, there's no such thing as hardcore on you. Every enlistment contract has it in there.
Well, I have to go back and see because I swear they were
just
hard
look
on
at it. It's right there. You can make a decision at the time. Of course, most people that come into the Army or the military are young and don't never read that.
Well,
I didn't notice it till I've been in the Army for 10 years. I said I could have made up another name for myself.
Well, they made me use Thurman TJ on everything, and I'm
no, you like I said, it's in your enlistment contract. You probably never read it.
Okay, I believe you, but they sure were hard on me. What's Thurman in all caps, TJ. So that's who I was. So I guess that's who I am now. Or T. Thurman. It probably wasn't even J, was it? It was T. Thurman, wasn't it? Do you remember? I was Navy, but same thing, Army, right? It was just one initial. It was your last name and your first initial, right?
Nope.
Just your last name, Thurman?
When you put your full name on there when you're dealing with anything legal, and your serial number.
Not me. We didn't have
RA114932228.
We didn't have those.
Yeah, you sure did.
No.
If you're in the military, you have a serial number.
No.
Officers have different numbers, but enlisted, everybody has a serial number. No, don't tell me that.
Yeah, honest to God, they did.
No, and then it became your Social Security number.
Well, they did away with them when I went through. That's all I know because I was.
No. You told me you were in the 80s. Don't tell me that. I'm personnel trained.
I was an Army. I was trained office personnel.
I don't care if you're. I don't care if you're in the Space Force. Everybody has a serial number.
No.
They sure do. They had either that or the time they were using the Social Security number.
Only my
and
Social
officers
Security.
had to have a special number.
On all my government files is Social Security number. I swear.
Okay, so that's it. They were using the Social Security number. They stopped going through the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So.
Well, maybe that's why you and I are working together now because they sent me back through with a 1985 Social Security number.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what
1985. By that time they had started using Social Security as a serial number.
Well, this
like
is
I said, my
important.
number is 114932228. That was my. In fact, I went from that being a reserve to a U.S. to an RA. So.
How many numbers was it?
It was 8 numbers.
Well. 460-982560. I just told you that's 10 numbers. That's my social.
That's your Social Security. They stopped using
the serial 8 number serials, and they told
stopped
me that.
using the
identification or serial number.
They stopped using the serial number when they went over to the Social Security number.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody has a serial number or a Social Security number.
Well, that's why the girl in the 70s traded my serial number in 75 for my Social Security number at Balboa.
Yeah, that's about the time. Yeah, that's about the time they did that.
Was 75?
That sounds good.
All right. And then in 85, when I went back through, they didn't even ask me what my serial, because
your Social Security number is your serial number.
Right. That's exactly what happened. So there we go, folks. And it's very complicated with me because I was GS, I was reserve, I was active duty, and I worked in personnel information, and I was with OPM, Office of Personnel Management. Not to mention security intelligence level files, right? Electronically, we didn't have such files. We had hard covers. They were old manila hard cover. So I worked before we had digital files. So I'm so old they didn't even have digital, and that's the way Jan is. So that's a whole other show we ought to do. Numbers and Social Security numbers. We could do a lot of stuff with Ace Folklife. Well, Jan, if you have time, come back tomorrow night. We can get you on Ace Folklife. Suzanne didn't show up tonight, folks. Neither did Bruce Cornett or Janet. So it must have been an important night. Oh, Jan, did you catch Thursday night the new Star Trek? Are you a Trekkie?
I don't have time for that.
Bless your heart. You really don't? It came on. I did. I watched it while I was working, but I watched it. All right. Well, we'll learn about that serial number because that may be something that we need to put in our UFO or UAP when we switch to, it's 9 digits or not, Social Security. How many? 460-982560. 9. 9-digital number provides capacity for assigning nearly 1 billion SSNs. Oh, man. All right. I think we've done a good job. And if you don't want to come back tomorrow night for ACE Folklife, come back next Friday.
If you want me to come back tomorrow night, I can.
Really? Yeah, as long as you're alive, let's do it. All right. Well, I'll tell Suzanne she didn't make it tonight, but we'll have you on tomorrow. All right. I'll call you tomorrow night, same time, okay? Maybe you can meet Jan and Rich and Ace Folklife. And
yeah, I thought
you like
I thought he was going to be on tonight.
I did too.
I want to talk to him about Bigelow. I want to find out.
Okay. Well, I'll call
why Bigelow didn't like him, and I know why he didn't like me, but that's.
All right. Well,
that's another story.
Yeah, well, he likes to talk the brain stuff, too, because of his dead wife or his ex-wife. But that's okay. Tomorrow night is going to be more open than just me and Jan. And we're going to work on this UAP-associates, folks. But right now we've got to be really careful. And we've got to put people in alienology and cosmology and epistemology and ontology and all the ologies. But ufology right now, Jan Aldrich was one before Army, and I was one before Navy, but we're working it out, serial and social and everything else. But you're also a historian, so ACE Folklife, folks, is art, culture, education, but it's also science, technology, history, and folklife. And folklife, because I started this in Kentucky, had to be under anthropology at the University of Kentucky. And we'll get into Kentucky and Louisville and Raw and Carla Rucker and all that tomorrow night. All right. Well, you did a great job. You get some rest and be ready to fire it up tomorrow night. Okay? We'll do it again.
Okay.
You had a lot of spitfire tonight. I enjoyed you. We'll do it again tomorrow night, Jan. Get some good sleep. Thank you. Love and light, dear. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, I was going to play some music. I guess I was trying. It just wouldn't come on. I don't know what the deal is. That's okay.